Hello, welcome to this installment of Creation Justice Webinars, a place where we seek to gather together to put our faith into action on behalf of our common home that we all share together. Delighted to have people joining us today. Normally, I'm joined by my co-host, the Reverend Michael Malcolm, but today it is me, Brooks Barrett, the Environmental Justice Minister for the United Church of Christ, and I'm joined by Rebecca Coate, who is with us today. She is really the right person to be kind of substituting in for the Reverend Michael Malcolm. She is our point person for the disciples of Christ and the United Church of Christ when it comes to engaging the United Nations. She's our global advocacy and education associate for our global missions program, global ministries programs. And so, Rebecca, I'm delighted to have you with us today. Can you, before I introduce our panelists for today, can you help set the stage for us as we talk about COP27 and the UN processes that are involved? What should we know as we head into this conversation for today?
Yeah, thanks, Brooks. I'm glad to be with you all today. I'm really happy to be present with you. As Brooks said, I am the UCC's representative to the United Nations, and we're talking today about COP. And COP is the acronym. Actually, not many people know what it stands for. They just know that it's related to climate change somehow. So COP is actually an acronym standing for the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this convention was signed in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro at what they call the Earth Summit, entered into force in 1994. And so the very first COP was held in 1995 in Berlin, I believe, and has occurred annually every year. So you'll see this year you're talking about COP27. This is the 27th Conference of Parties meeting. And some of you may be familiar with the Paris Agreement that was signed at COP21 in 2015. So it's really kind of the place where all of the countries send representatives, those who have signed on to this convention, which is most of the countries, excuse me, they send representatives, they discuss the progress that's been made on these international agreements around climate change. So that's the Kyoto Protocol, that's the Paris Agreement, and then that's the Intergovernmental Convention as well. They discuss progress or lack thereof, and then they set out hopefully some new steps and some additional promises and achievements that we want to have going forward. So it's a big meeting, it's a big process, it's a lot going on. And I will say, with one downside of it, was with anything dealing with the United Nations, is there's really not a lot of mechanisms to hold states, countries accountable. So we might get into that a little bit later, but in particular, there's, the US has pledged to do X, Y, and Z, and there's no mechanism to force the US to follow through on those commitments, right? So some folks are a little more disheartened by this big UN process, but it is, a formal convention. There are benchmarks, there are agreements that we can hold our governments to. So that's why folks are engaging in this process, and it's happening right now as we speak in Egypt this year. So COP27 is being held in Egypt, and I think a couple of our panelists are there currently. But that's kind of what is COP and the kind of bigger framework that we're looking at about today. Excuse me.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that introduction and overview of what is going on right now and how the process works. Let me now introduce our speakers in the order in which they'll be speaking. Our first speaker will be Ineza Umhoza Grace. Ineza is the co-founder and global coordinator for the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition that is composed of more than 530 youth from over 40 different countries. She is additionally the founder of the youth-led Rwandan nonprofit, The Green Protector, where she serves as an executive officer. She has been featured in a number of publications ranging from the National Geographic to NPR. Our second panelist will be Dr. Tanesha Gumbo from the All Africa Conference of Churches, where he serves as the program executive for economic and ecological justice. Previously, he has worked for the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, the Institute for Democratic Alternatives in Zimbabwe, and the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. His work has spanned policy, research, advocacy, funding development, and capacity building for churches and other organizations. Our third panelist will be the Reverend Michael Colito from the Theological Education by Extension in Zambia, where he serves as the Training and Capacity Development Manager. In this capacity, he has organized and conducted trainings for church leaders in the 10 provinces of Zambia. The trainings cover leadership development and community banking, as well as eco-theology and being a green church. He additionally has over 15 years of experience as a pastor for the Reformed Church of Zambia. We're delighted to have each of you with us today. And Neza, if you could get us started, and we are aware that you're in Egypt and you're caught up in the midst of everything that's going on, and you'll have to take off soon after your remarks. So we're respectful and grateful for your time with us today as you're very busy. And so we'll turn things over to you. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Before I start, can I confirm that you can still hear me? The connection is not that great on this side. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come to this session. I know it's not be okay to say like to come when it's online, but I believe that this ability to be able to expel and share knowledge and connect with people online is a fortunate that we can really embrace in our work. So yeah. I said, my name is Ineza. I'm part of the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition. And I'm at COP27, which is exciting, to be frank, because I get the opportunity to be part of a few young negotiators from our country and from Africa who are here on the ground, trying to see how climate promises that we're receiving from leaders can really be transferable into climate action that is going to be creating tangible hope for our community. So for us, especially as African young people or even youth or in general, loss and damage is the thing we want to see progress on. So for starters, when we say loss and damage means the negative impact of climate change that we can no longer mitigate for or adapt for. And it's more like, to be an example, is, for example, if a community in Bangladesh is having resource on how to adapt for erosion, for example, or flooding, but then we are having extreme flooding and extreme erosion, there's no such opportunity for the community in Bangladesh to adapt. So that is the loss and damage we are talking from. And for years, I like the introduction made by Baker saying that the convention was in 1992. That's true. But since 1992, small island country been calling for concrete action on addressing climate change impact, that is loss and damage. But since 1992 until today, the same message is the same demand is being the one that developing countries are putting forward. We need action to address loss and damage. And we've been having small progress since 1992. And to us, it's more like, especially young people, is more like breaking the promise all over again. And our countries, our governments, or like our way to have a sustainable economic development is being challenged with this, with the extreme climate change impact. So I come from Rwanda, which is a small country located in Africa that did less to contribute to the greenhouse gas emission, but we are at the forefront experiencing the negative impact. So in terms, we are vulnerable in terms of flooding, erosion, that is affecting our agriculture sector. And agriculture sector is one of the pillars of our economic development. And once we are having this climate change impact, our country is losing its GDP because we are using what could be the resource for education to try to build back resilience of our community, which is not bad, because that our community, we need to survive, we need to have a future. But that kind of modality is not safe for our country, because we don't have it's kind of putting much more pressure, much more depth for our country in terms of getting appropriate action. So for Rwanda, we do have some concrete and available example on how we're trying to link or how we're trying to address loss and damage, but it's not enough. So that's why we came together as youth, but not only from Rwanda, but all over the world, to really showcase the fact that we need to have a global solidarity stand in demanding action to address loss and damage. So we came at COP27. We have a clear statement of what is going to be, what we are going to measure as a COP27 success. Because we have our demand, the letter of demand for the COP27 presidency, and it's clearly stating that we need the finance for loss and damage. So this finance that we are calling for loss and damage, this finance needs to be new, additional, and grant-based, because we don't wish to see any kind of a solution that's going to be fake, that looks like a solution on one side. But then when you look closely on the other side, it's more as business as usual. It's more like putting the country more at risk instead of giving them appropriate answer. So the only way we are going to be able to come up with concrete solutions is to allow the countries who have been at the forefront experiencing these impacts to be the one to draft solutions. Because yes, if we're talking about flooding, we have countries in developing countries who are been facing this impact for quite some time. If we're talking about sea level rise, we have island community who have been facing this impact for quite some time. And this community, we've been trying to survive since 1992, as it was said, which means we have a series of knowing what kind of solution can work for our community. So what we are demanding is for the system, or like the process, to acknowledge the fact that we can have homegrown solution in terms of having action to address loss and damage. And by homegrown solution is also setting a reminder that now more than ever, youth are active stakeholders. We can be part of solution. We are tired, yes, of fake promises, and we can hold leaders accountable, but then at the same time, we can be driver of solution in our community, because at the end of the day, we are striving for our future. Is our future which is at stake, and we can, yes, be victim, but we can also be part of the solution. So that would be what I can share, and I'm very grateful that I get the opportunity to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those remarks and for joining us. We now turn things over to Tanashi Gumbo.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for arranging this important discussion. Indeed, we are on the ground in Sharm el-Sheikh trying to raise the voice of the faith actors in the world discourse. So the AACC, as indicated, is an ecumenical body which is representing many congregants in the continent of Africa. So we see this particular COP as the African COP, and indeed, we have tried to ensure that our voice is heard. As AACC, we strongly believe in the creation care, our role as stewards of the creation, but we also realize that we are not the only faith which is affected when it comes to climate change issues. As a result of that, we reached out to other faith actors and came up with what we call the Africa Faith Actors Network on Climate Justice. Africa Faith Actors Network on Climate Justice is a realization that this challenge actually affects us all beyond religions. So through this particular network, we try by all means to ensure that we are coordinated in our countries, we are organized, and also we are mobilized to influence climate justice. And they are emphasizing the issue of climate justice because we are sure and we really believe that there are all all those who are actually responsible for some of these developments, and some of the communities are actually victims. So we are trying to balance that particular equation, and we have a theme which is actually guiding our intervention. The theme is the welfare of the earth is our welfare. The welfare of the earth is our welfare. And in this case, it was out of a realization that when you talk about issues of climate justice, these are issues of matters. These are matters of life and death, because year in, year out, daily we lose lives through floods, through displacements, through hunger and drought. And as a result, as the faith leaders, we are always the faith port of call for those who want assistance. And we actually realize that issues of climate change can actually be addressed from a moral, ethical, and also justice perspective, in as much as others may also be using other routes like politics and others. So for us, we are trying to influence the whole discussion from a moral and ethical perspective. That is why we are calling for the depoliticization of the whole discourse at this particular COP. We are trying by all means to ensure that these issues are addressed, not driven by political interest, but from a more theological, a moral and ethical perspective. So as a result, our demands, our issues are not many. We still also push for mechanisms that allow us to adapt to the new situation. So these mechanisms require support from those who committed through the mechanisms that our colleagues have already talked to. So we need support in that regard. But at the same time, the issue of loss and damage, as indicated by our youth, is a critical issue for us. We believe that we need support. We need support to ensure that we compensate the losses that we continue to have through floods, through displacements. As a result, we have also noted that some of the issues that are coming from here want to link issues of loss and damage financing to loans, which is not a good thing. For us, let's address these issues as a separate issue. And indeed, when it comes to issues of mitigation, those ones we are not worried about making profits. But when it comes to issues of adaptation, these are issues of moral and ethical background. So in short, these are our issues. We need support towards our adaptation. We need support towards loss and damage. And indeed, we actually call for the depoliticization of the whole discourse, so that we look at it from a more moral, ethical perspective, more than politics. This is what I can say for now. And indeed, we are working with other colleagues from the north, but also from the south, who are also coming from the faith background to raise awareness on this. And we have been attending and organizing a lot of sessions with this in this direction. Thank you for now.
Thank you so much for those words. And now we'll turn things over to Michael.
Thank you so much. I will share my screen quickly. Are you able to see it?
Not right now.
Hello?
No.
Okay. You're able to see it now?
No, I'm afraid not.
Oh my goodness. All right. Okay. But I will share on the climate change and its impact on Zambia, and what the theological education by extension in Zambia is doing to mitigate and even to bring about an adaptation approach. That's what I'm going to share. So my presentation will start with first the Zambian demographic context. Approximately, Zambia has got close to 20 million people. Then from the Zambia Statistics Agency, we have almost 95% of the population as Christians. Then also of the population of the 20 million, about 60% of the people live below the poverty line or the poverty datum line, which means they live on less than $1 per day, less than $1 or $2 per day. Then apart from that, I'll also quickly share the Zambian deforestation status. According to what has been discovered, deforestation rates in Zambia, approximately at 3,000 hectares of forest cover is lost per year. That's according to the Center for International Forestry Research. Then in 2010, Zambia had 22.4 million hectares of tree cover, which was lost according to the Global Forest Watch. Then the most recent statistics which have been given on the deforestation status is in Africa. Zambia is the highest deforested country in terms of the rate. Then also it is ranked 5th globally. That's according to the WWF watch. Now, when you look at all these statistics, they are greatly having a negative effect on Zambia. There is an extreme negative effect on Zambia, and the effect is on number one, on agriculture. It has been observed that due to deforestation and due to climate change in general, or the global warming and the emission of greenhouse gases, floods have increased in Zambia, and the rainfall pattern in Zambia has become seriously erratic, and that has affected the food security of the nation. Then also it has had the climate change as a whole has had an effect on health due to the poor quality of air, and the flooding has increased mosquitoes, and the mosquitoes have raised issues of malaria, where a lot of people are dying from malaria, and also waterborne diseases like cholera and the like, and dysentery, because of the flooding. Then the other effect that climate change has had on Zambia is the impact on wildlife due to the drying up of rivers and water bodies, and even other natural resources have ended up disappearing. Animals which were there in the past are no longer there because the ecosystem has been affected, and it has had a ripple effect on a number of things. And also, needless to say that one of the other things which has been affected is the Zambia's economy. The employment rate in Zambia is quite low. Quite a number of people are not employed, and Zambia is regarded to be a middle-income country, meaning we are neither rich nor poor. We are just on the middle. And because of the climate change, the economy has been affected such that quite a number of people have been led to live in abject poverty. Now, looking at what climate change has done to Zambia, what I'm presenting is the mitigation, adaptation, and the resilience approach which TEAS, or the theological education by extension in Zambia, has developed over the years. And one of the things that we have developed is, number one, to revisit the concept of the salt of the earth and the light of the world from the Bible. Meaning, if the climate change is having an impact on Zambia and even a world as a whole, one of the things that comes out clearly is, what is it that we are supposed to do as the salt and the light of the earth from the biblical perspective? Meaning, it is calling for us to be Christians that are going to practice that which we say. In other words, there must be an element of Christian praxis, hence the coming up of the Wise Green Church project, which we are currently implementing. Then, apart from the revisiting the salt and the earth concept, we have also reached a place where we would want Christians. Zambia is 95.5% Christians. And if Zambia is going through deforestation at a higher rate, ranked number 1 in Africa, then number 5 in the whole world, it means there must be an aspect where Christians begin to revisit the concept of dominion. What does it mean when the Bible says you can have dominion as indicated in Genesis? We feel as TEAS that concept has been misused, and it has been misused to an extent that it's bringing a lot of damage from the Zambian perspective. Hence, when revisiting the concept of dominion, we are trying to begin to realign people to understand that God has not only put us on earth to dominate, but also to take care of the earth. That includes an aspect of environmental care. Then number 3, in promoting mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, we are advocating for environmental education in TEAS member churches. So many member churches of TEAS have what we call mission schools, or these schools which are established by missionaries. So if we are to talk about environmental care and even bring about an awareness that has got to do with climate change, one agenda we are pushing is to make sure that the mission schools where children from the member churches go either in boarding school or day school, they need to begin to understand the issues of climate change. And we are also advocating for when people are going through catechism or catechesis before they become communicant members of churches. In the catechism, we are advocating that there must be an aspect where there is a component of environmental justice, a component of climate change, that they may begin to understand that they are called to take care of the earth. And also, lastly, even in the liturgy among ministers, in a year, we are advocating that ministers must have an opportunity to preach and even have a sermon that has got to do with the care for the environment, other than promising people to go to heaven and a number of things that are preached Sunday in and Sunday out. The liturgy must have a component of taking care of the environment. Then the 4th thing that we have done as TEAS in trying to do to mitigate and even to adapt to the climate change is partnering with the newly created Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. So the new government that came in place last year created the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. And this ministry was created in view of the negative impact of climate change. And in partnering with this ministry, so far we've planted over 15,000 trees in the northern part of Zambia. And we've also planted these trees in on the Copperbelt province of Zambia. And we intend to do a lot more even in the central province of Zambia in a town called Mkushi. And we are also, through this same ministry and the Ministry of Agriculture, promoting among many small-scale farmers the promotion of climate smart agriculture, conservation farming, or what others have called farming God's way through the MICA, and also promoting agroforestry, trees that are going to be used to help people other than using the traditional methods of farming that are destructive to the soil. Then lastly, in trying to bring mitigation and even adaptation, we have developed a joint environmental justice advocacy with other global partners through international conferences. So even as I'm speaking now, we are participating in this, and the COP27, which is part of what is taking place. And our feeling is that we cannot only handle this only from the Zambian perspective and the TEAS perspective alone, but it must also be joining forces and joining hands with others that are advocating for environmental justice, so that together with our global partners, we can be in a position to have a joint voice and a voice that will be able to bring justice to the environment. So that's that which we are doing as TEAS, and for now, I can stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those presentations. It's much appreciated. We're going to give an opportunity now for some questions and answers. Becca, do you have a question that you'd like to start us off with?
Yeah, so we'll start with, so both of you talked about approaching this issue of climate change and climate justice, environmental justice from a theological kind of moral standpoint and talking about it in those kinds of terms as Christians and as members who are working for Christian organizations, I'll say it that way. Do you change the way that you talk about these issues when you're speaking with your government or when you're speaking with folks that aren't necessarily Christian or part of your faith? I'd be interested to hear from Tinashe about how they worked in an interfaith way to come up with this statement, if there are similarities or differences for how we as Christians talk about this issue within ourselves and how we might talk about it to governments or to people of other faith.
Can I come in? Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, indeed. So what we did as a network, when we established this network, we actually went through an intensive training, firstly to understand the technicalities that are involved, because this is a technical subject. It involves some technical jargon, so we needed to be on the same page in terms of that. Then we went to a step further to try and be on the same page when it comes to creation care. So in the meantime, in as much as we are still recruiting other faith, at the moment, the only participating faith are the Christians and the Muslims. They are the active members, almost on a 50-50 basis. So we realized that when we went through the interfaith discussions, trying to see where we converge and where we disconnect, we actually realized that we have more that unites us when it comes to issues of creation care than what divides us. We all believe in ourselves as stewards. We all believe in the creator, the same creator, when it comes to issues of the environment. So I can safely say we were lucky enough to find this convergence, and up to now, no problem when it comes to issues of the of language. Even when I talked about the theme itself, the welfare of the earth is our welfare, you will realize that this is a biblical text that we took from Jeremiah. But our colleagues from the other faith, they don't have any problem with it. Of course, we are sensitive when it comes to issuance of some of our publications. For example, when we were in Gabon for the Africa Climate Week, we came up with some declarations, and in that process, we were not only faith leaders, but we were also collaborating with other civic organizations. And when it came to issuance of the declaration, we then settled for language which is actually inclusive, a language which accommodates all of us. So we'll then remove some of the text, specific text which refer to the Quran or to the Bible itself, and so that it becomes religiously neutral. But otherwise, so far so good when it comes to believing in this issue of creation care, but also our role as stewards in the whole aspect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think I want to kind of just follow up and continue with this conversation that Becca started for us by kind of getting your thoughts on when we talk about loss and damage. It sounds almost like a very kind of insurance type of language, right? But we can come at this from our faith perspective and the language that we have. And I'm kind of curious what kind of language or that you're drawn to in addressing those issues. We have Isaiah talking about repairers of the breach and a restorer of the streets that we live in, and then Noah coming into a situation. In some ways, we're talking about an ethic of reparations, some would call it, restoration. What kind of language do you use to talk about those kind of issues of loss and damage?
I think others will come in, especially the theologians. My theologian from Zambia will be able to come in a better. I'm not a theologian myself, but I work with the theologians. And indeed, I realize that when we come together, particularly when we are reflecting these things, our leaders are able to apply the language from the Quran, the language from the Bible itself. I may not be able to represent them well in terms of how we are doing this, but for me, especially coming from the technical side, I normally, that's why even for the titling of our network, it's Africa Faith Actors Network on Climate Justice. So the justice becomes the base for everything, becomes everything when it comes to the loss. When we agree that there is a loser and someone who is responsible, then obviously we need to see justice actually happening. Even when it comes to issues, I think now we are talking about other languages like transitioning from use of coal and other sources of energy. We go back to the issue of justice to say, in as much as we may want to transition from there, but we are also yet to be where you are right now, which means there is someone who is being referred to here. As a result, the issue of justice comes in. So that is how we are playing around with this issue. It remains a technical issue. It remains something which actually is more understood. Especially, I remember at some point we even tried to apply some medical languages to say when we are talking about a loss, which means my finger has actually been removed or because of this particular incident, and as a result, I need to be compensated. So the word compensation actually then also comes in. But when you talk about damage, I have been damaged, but I still have room for me to be cured. So some of the terminologies that we also apply as a way of trying to make our leaders understand it. So you can see from my example that in as much as we are theologically rooted, talking about moral ethics, talking about justice, but at the same time, we try to apply other disciplines so that we ensure that our ordinary person understands what we mean by this particular aspect. And I'm happy also my sister who presented first tried also to explain to us from their perspective how we can actually understand the concept of loss and damage. But for us, justice is at the base of everything, in as much as we go to other disciplines to understand this. Thank you.
Thank you for those helpful remarks on centering justice. Michael, do you have anything you'd like to contribute?
Yes, please. When you come to loss and damage, one of the things that we have advocated for is if the loss is taking place, if the damage is taking place, one of the clear-cut things is that it doesn't please God. God is not pleased to say these losses, these damages are taking place, because there are several scriptures in the Bible where God celebrates the presence of the trees, God is celebrating the presence of the rivers, God is celebrating the presence of the oceans. So if these losses and damages are taking place, the question is, what is man doing? So if we sit back and relax and do nothing, then it doesn't help at all. Hence, the concept which we have advocated for is the wise green church. Now, of course, Becca asked a question to say, what happens if you are working with the others who don't believe, who don't have religious beliefs in the first question? One of the things is that we are working with the Ministry of Green Economy, as I said earlier on, and these might not all be Christians. Some of them have got beliefs that are away from the Christian belief, but we reach a point where we're able to agree on principles to say the damage is taking place, the losses are taking place, and we can't continue to go this way because in the long run, our great-grandchildren, those who are going to come after us, might not find the things that we have seen with our eyes. The trees will be gone, the wildlife will be gone, and a number of things will be gone. So in terms of the loss and damages, if the loss and damage is taking place, is there a way that we can mitigate these losses and we can be in a position to correct the wrongs that have been done? Of course, over a period of time, it might not be completely total restoration, but at least reaching a place where we are in a position to correct the wrongs that have taken place, and we find at least moving a step forward in bringing environmental justice. Thank you.
Michael, I'll follow up with you quickly too. I'm also curious if you can tell us a little bit more about the deforestation that you were talking about, what its causes are, and kind of the strategy for addressing that.
Thank you very much. Unemployment is high in Zambia. And currently, even as we are the highest rated country in terms of deforestation, I can also say in Africa, we are one of the most deforested countries, meaning we still have the trees. Now, what is happening is that people do not have an alternative source of livelihood. So the only source of livelihood which they have, the majority of them, if you go to Lusaka, you go to the other provinces, is the charcoal burning. So they cut trees, put them in heaps, then burn them, bury them under the sun, then make charcoal, put the charcoal in bags, and take this charcoal to the cities. And you discover to say someone has, according to statistics that was estimated to say, in a day, Zambia is losing approximately 5 or 4 football pitches of 4 football pitches of forest cover being lost. So the issue is number one, unemployment, where people are finding charcoal to be the source of business. Then number two, only 25%, if not 15% of Zambians, 20 million Zambians have access to electricity. So if they only have access to electricity, 15%, the others depend on charcoal as their source of energy for cooking and using so many other things. So you have unemployment, you have energy, then also there are issues of clearing land for agriculture and a number of things. So these are the key contributing factors to deforestation. So if we are to answer your question, what is the solution to this? Number one, it will be very difficult to stop people to say don't burn charcoal. If they don't burn charcoal, where are they going to get money to pay maybe for the school fees for children, to buy their bread, to buy their mealie meal? So there must be an alternative source of income. And what that will be, for now I may not know, but there must be an alternative source of income where people can be able to generate income apart from cutting down trees to be a source of income. So that's one option. Then the other option is, apart from depending on charcoal, there's been a promotion of using gas. Is it LPG? The government is promoting that, people using gas stoves now, buying gas cylinders in homes. But they are a privilege for those who are probably middle income people. They have an opportunity to buy those gas cylinders to use as alternative energy. And also there is an aspect of being in Africa, we have the sun almost much of the year. So solar energy is being promoted as part of what people can use either for cooking and even other electrical appliances, I mean, which they can use. They can use solar energy instead of using energy that comes from the tree. So those are some of the things that are happening. And to help in that, what we are doing is that in areas where we've seen that deforestation has greatly taken place, for example, in Mkushi, for example, in the northern part of Zambia, in Kasama, through the global ministries. We've helped a group we trained in the Wise Green Church to plant the 15,000 trees, which I talked about, and also continuing to empower them with knowledge, giving them a little funds to be on radio stations, TV stations, to talk about the negative effects of climate change and even deforestation itself.
Great. Thank you for that background, Michael. And thank you for promoting the work that we're all doing together. So some of you may have donated to global ministries, particularly during our mission dash that we did back in August. And some of that money goes to programs like the program that Michael was just talking about that TEAS is doing. So there are ways in which you, as all of us together as the UCC and as the disciples through global ministries, has already been doing some of this work on adaptation and mitigation, which is great. We've got a question from our audience that I wanted to follow up on as we're talking about framing climate justice in this theological lens. Tinashe, you talked about depoliticizing climate justice and climate change. How do you find those two kind of work together? Where are some difficulties that you're facing? Because I know here in the United States, in our political context, we're very divided between our political parties. And when we talk about climate change and climate justice, do you see that in Africa? Where are the ways in which that you're working to help depoliticize this issue?
Thank you so much. So you will see that our work as a network, we focus and we emphasize the local, because at the local, that's where things happen. We emphasize that our networks should be able to engage the political leadership in their countries before they even talk about Africa Climate Week or the 27 and others. They need to be able to convince their own policymakers. By the way, these countries commit themselves to be doing something, to be creating an environment for adaptation, but also for all the other things. So you will see that at local level, our countries are so polarized politically between the ruling party and the opposition political parties. As a result, most of the policies that are crafted or that are reformed are actually it is actually done along political lines, even where a policy should be addressing the needs of an ordinary person. If it is against the political will of that political party, then that policy is actually, it does not see the light of the day. So as a result, there is a politicization at local level. But when it comes again to the global level, we continue to see these platforms being politicized. We know that this politics is not detached from the economic benefits or the economic interest of our countries. The North and South, the divide. Yesterday, I attended one of the sessions which were being addressed by one of the government official from the North. You could actually tell that in as much we are pushing for loss and damage financing, you can see the idea of trying to make this a part and parcel of the loans that are given to African countries. So that again is another component that we see some political, economic interests actually influence. At least this particular COP has seen some African leaders at least speaking with almost one voice, unlike before when we saw some governments from the North actually trying to come and convince African governments to take certain decisions or to toe certain lines. But for this particular one, I think we are so far so good. We don't know as the negotiations are still ongoing. We don't know what will actually come out as we go towards next week. But so far, all the heads of denominations, the heads of states that we interacted with, they have been pushing the same language. We don't know what then happens probably in the meetings behind the scenes where we are not part of. So that is actually what we continue to call for, to say, when you pronounce this in our presence, when you go behind the scene in the negotiation rooms, we need to see you being consistent in terms of this particular message. Don't change because you have been convinced by any other governments. This is what we are seeing.
Thank you so much for that. You know, as we enter into our final minutes together, I think we may have time for one more question before we kind of enter into a period where maybe we want to hear from you about the vision that you're casting moving forward and where we can go. One question that I think is important to also talk about is if there are some justice dimensions that we should be mindful of when it comes to a green economy, when it comes to renewable energy and solar. There's been some statements made about the justice concerns that go into producing solar, that the resources, the metals and so forth that go into producing solar often can involve some exploitation of land and people. And so, are there some justice dimensions that we need to be thinking about as we're thinking how to best move forward internationally in addressing the climate crisis together?
Thank you very much. One of the things that I can say is, say, for example, there have been an aspect of people wanting to develop batteries that can be used either in cars, in electric cars, so that we reduce on the carbon emissions. And some of these must be mined in countries in Africa, including Zambia. And you discover to say, one of the things, there is no justice at all. The minerals will be gotten away from an African country, taken maybe to Europe, taken either to America, but the country that remains back, the land degraded through the mining, you will discover that people are not properly paid. There is a whole lot of issues connected. So in as much as there is a fight against climate change and trying to meet one or two things that might try to mitigate issues of climate change, either through the mining aspect, you discover that the mining or the extractive industry is leaving even more damage to the African nations. And that is rarely addressed. It is not properly addressed. As long as the minerals go to Europe, the cobalt goes to Europe, smartphones are made out of the cobalt, and a number of things, you discover to say there is more damage that is left on the African continent, if I were to speak in those lines. And other than mitigating, there is more damage which is being done. So in as much as we talk about climate justice, there is also a correlation between the same climate justice and the other injustices that are happening even in the extractive industry. So there is need, even as we speak, either as a church, to seriously strike a balance, that our voice will not be one-sided, but it will be a voice that will try to have a cross-cutting impact on several issues that are also happening. Let me stop there for now.
I think I can also add one or two. Thank you, Rev, for raising those things. I think what you have said is clearly what I was thinking, to say, in as much as we may want to support this mitigation route, it also causes other injustices as he has indicated. For example, these companies which actually come to do business in our countries, at times you will see that the resources that are poured into the projects, they come as in form of loans. They come as loans. As a result, we end up being indebted to those countries again. In as much as we wanted them to be assisting in mitigating the problem, but we also create another problem in form of public debt. And this is clear in Africa. He also touched on issues of environmental degradation, but also labor injustices themselves. You will see that the concept of local content development itself, these companies will always come with their own managers, their own equipment, their own whatever, without anything actually coming or being linked to the local economy. So the issue of local content development is not also being fulfilled in a way as we try to address this issue of climate change. So it becomes a circle for us. We remain the victim in as much as we may also see this as a solution. So in as much as we say in mitigation, yes, you can do your profit, but that profit again should be done in a way which also promotes justice. So injustice is the main issue, is the main discourse in this whole discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think both of you have given some powerful messages that for me really hit home and illustrate how you can't have climate justice without economic justice, and you can't have climate justice without addressing global inequalities. And so thank you, both of you, for those really powerful statements as we kind of come to the close of our hour. Becca, are there some things that you'd like to draw our attention to, or some final closing remarks that you'd like to have?
Yeah, thanks, Brooks. I just want to again echo what our panelists have said about the intersectionality of all of these issues, right? Like you can have concerns about climate change, but you also need to do the work on all these other issues, right? Why is Africa the one that is experiencing all of this? Because of colonialism and imperialism. Our history is in that in that way, and the way that it's still happening today. And you know, so those are kind of it's a big issue. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming, but you know, we can do it together. Our partners like TEAS and the AAC, they're already doing some of this work on the ground in local communities with affected folks. And so I just want to encourage y'all, if you are interested in learning more about the work that our Global Ministries partners are doing, you can come onto our website, globalministries.org. You can learn more about our projects and partners specifically around climate justice issues or on a whole lot of other issues. The Christmas season is coming up. We have an alternative giving catalog that we like to promote around this time of year. Like me, don't need this in your house cluttering up your space. You can ask your friends and family members to donate to a particular project or partner that you care about that's doing important work. So I'll share those links and with you now, but I just want to encourage you. We as the youth already doing this work in collaboration with global partners, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Becca. And as we come to the end of our hour here together, lots of gratitude to our panelists. We are so thankful that you have given of your time and your energy and your expertise and wisdom to be with us and to share.